Donald Trump is having a rough Sunday. His political allies went on the morning talk shows and ended up embarrassing him. His approval ratings are falling, and he's facing more setbacks in court. On top of all that, Trump made it clear just how frustrated he is with everything going wrong, especially after being provoked into a meltdown by one of his least favorite Democrats. That Democrat was Adam Schiff, who appeared on Jen Psaki's show and sent Trump into a frenzy, leading to an unhinged post on Truth Social that we'll dive into shortly. But before we get to Trump's rant, if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, it really helps and means a lot. Now, before we look at Trump's outrageous post, let's first listen to what Adam Schiff said that set him off.
Here with me now, as promised, is Senator Adam Schiff of California. Senator, it's good to see you. There's quite a bit going on right now, so I want to talk to you about all of it. I just want to start with the polls because they're pretty consistent, and Trump is underwater on a number of issues. My theory, I just talked through this, is that part of that is his misread of what he called a mandate and just this massive overreach in a number of areas. But how do you see it?
I think that's exactly right. He's claiming that he had this huge mandate, which of course he didn't have. But more than that, they keep saying that he's just following through on his promises. But in fact, he's not. His main promise was he was going to improve the economy. He was going to bring prices down. Of course, everything he's done has been contradictory to that. The tariff wars have just driven inflationary pressures even higher. American families are struggling even more. So really the central promise he has reneged on, and now he's doing all these other things that he never promised during the campaign. In fact, to the degree that they were written about during the campaign in Project 2025, he tried to run away and disavow them. So he doesn't have a mandate to do what he's doing, and I think it's reflected in the already enormous voter dissatisfaction in his first 100 days.
Yeah, people are just starting to feel the tariffs. They're going to feel them a lot more, which I imagine is going to be worse for him. We'll see what he does. One of the numbers, or some of the sets of numbers that were very interesting to me, were around immigration. And one of the ones that stuck out to me was the approval rating for his handling of the Abrego Garcia case, which is very interesting because a lot of people, I feel like there was some commentary saying we shouldn't talk about it or it shouldn't be front and center, but only 31% of people have approved of his handling of that, which is, I think, very telling. What's interesting about him, and I mentioned this too, though, is that when things like that are clear in the polling, he still goes a step farther. I mean, he arrested a Judge Hannah Duggan in Milwaukee this week. He had arrested a former judge in New Mexico this week. It feels a little bit like he's still escalating on the immigration front, even when the polling is telling you something different. But what are you seeing about his actions out there?
Yeah, I was struck by that on the polling, too. There were a couple of things that leapt out at me. One was just how poor his numbers were in the handling of that case, because you're right. There was some saying this is a distraction, we shouldn't go there. But this is, to me, the tip of the spear in terms of his violation of the rule of law, basically ignoring a court order to facilitate the return of Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who was, by their own admission, deported in error. And so the fact that his numbers are so terrible on that means, the public is understanding the case, finds it important, doesn't agree with what the president is doing, and that case, I think, and others, including now we're learning about him deporting, or the administration deporting, a 4-year-old with a stage 4 cancer without giving the family a chance to keep that kid here, U.S. citizen, get the necessary treatment. The other number that really stood out to me, though, was by a 2-to-1 margin, 50-21. People think that he has made their economic circumstances worse rather than better. Those are really damning numbers. But even more broadly on immigration, what concerns me gravely, because now they're using courthouses as a fulcrum for immigration policy. They're using the IRS to enforce immigration policy. They're taking people's appointments with immigration to turn around and deport them, even when people go to get their citizenship, take their citizenship oath. What that's going to mean is fewer undocumented people willing to go to court. And most of the time when undocumented people go to court, they're not the defendant. They're the victim or they're the witness. So they're not going to participate in the justice system. Why file your taxes if they're going to use your taxes against you to deport you? So it's going to mean a lot of people aren't going to be paying their taxes that would normally be paying taxes. People aren't going to show up for their immigration appointments because they'll fear they're going to be used to just grab them instead of whatever process they're in.
We have to take every opportunity possible, which Senator Schiff has done so well, to call out Donald Trump on every issue, on every platform. There are too many Democrats who have said that chasing after all these issues is a distraction or is the wrong thing to do. I completely disagree. You may believe that the economy is the message we need to be staying on top of. That's great. You should. But when we don't recognize that there are a whole host of issues, that there is a constitutional crisis happening, when we do not address all of the pains being felt by people across this country, we seem kind of inauthentic to our approach and messaging against Donald Trump's administration, especially when there are humanity rights violations happening every day that have people so scared. And Adam Schiff's call out of that led Donald Trump to melt down. As I said in this Truth Social post right here, Trump wrote, "Hopefully Act Blue, the Democrats' illegal scam used to raise money, including from not allowed foreign contributions, is being looked at by authorities. The Dems only know how to win by cheating, something which they do better than any group or party in history. But now, with their terrible policies and candidates and people like crooked Adam Schiff, who demanded a full pardon from Sleepy Joe leading the way, it's almost impossible to reach their money goals. The USA is wise to those scoundrels and crooks. Also, why did the autopin give Schiff a pardon? Biden knew nothing about it. Who operated the autopin? That is the biggest question being asked in D.C. They almost destroyed our country. They should all be in jail. First of all, Adam Schiff was very public that he did not want or need a pardon from President Biden. But maybe Donald Trump constantly talking about wanting to lock him up or deport him or send him to prison in El Salvador might have contributed to the reason that Joe Biden wanted to protect Adam Schiff from Donald Trump's wrath, that he has very clearly carried out. Donald Trump said the weaponization of the DOJ against political opponents was happening constantly under the Biden administration. This is all he talked about on the campaign trail. But now, as he mentioned, attacking Act Blue has become his focus lately. The platform used to raise money by Democrats. It is Donald Trump who is weaponizing the DOJ. That is abundantly clear. And that is why he is so mad and losing his mind. Because, in fact, as we talked about in a previous video, Donald Trump trying to attack Act Blue actually led to the best fundraising day since he was inaugurated, completely backfiring on him. And it's not just that. Donald Trump's approval rating continues to fall with all groups, as Jen Psaki broke down right here.
This week, we will hit the 100-day mark of Donald Trump's presidency. If you can't believe how quickly time has flown by, that's not at all how I feel. But if that's how you feel, don't worry, everyone. There are only 1,361 days to go of this journey. Now, the first 100 days, though, is often the high watermark of a presidency. You're fresh off a political win, you have momentum, you can finally try to implement the plans you talked about on the campaign trail. You're still in a sort of honeymoon phase of your presidency, for most presidents. It's a time when the American people are most willing to extend some benefit of the doubt of what you're going to do. But as we approach the end of Trump's first 100 days, it seems he was pretty quick to squander whatever goodwill he came in with. And that's not just me saying it. I mean, poll after poll after poll, and I literally mean there's so many of them, is making that all perfectly clear. There was a new NBC News poll out just this morning that shows Trump's favorability is at just 45%. Now, Fox News poll put his approval a point lower at 44%, which, by the way, is the lowest rating that Fox has ever measured for any president at this point in their term. And those weren't even the worst numbers Trump saw this week. A Washington Post ABC News poll showed his approval rating at just 39%. And then there are the numbers on the specific issues, and this is where I think it gets very interesting, like these from the New York Times. Trump's underwater by 4 points on immigration, an issue that typically had been his strength. He's underwater by 8 points on managing the federal government, underwater by 11 points on trade, by 12 points on the economy, by 14 points on foreign conflicts, underwater by 21 points on his handling of the war between Russia and Ukraine, and he's underwater by 21 points on his handling of the case involving Garcia. And I think what we're seeing here very clearly is just how badly Donald Trump overplayed his hand. Part of the reason he overplayed his hand is because of his completely warped view of what the outcome in November meant. I mean, you might remember in the weeks and months following the election, Donald Trump and his allies claimed he had a historic mandate to basically do whatever he wanted.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
They're just upset, they're desperate, they're humiliated, they're embarrassed, but Donald Trump has a mandate.
The president-elect clearly buoyed by his victory, telling me in our conversation today that he believes he has a, quote, mandate.
Donald Trump has a mandate. He has the greatest presidential mandate probably since Reagan in 1984.
The presidential election of November 5th was a mandate like has not been seen in many decades.
Now, no matter how many times he or people around him say it, he didn't even win a majority of the vote. And that is just a fact. And yet Donald Trump thought he had a mandate to start a trade war. He thought he had a mandate to pick people like Pete Hegseth for his cabinet to oversee the Defense Department. He thought he had a mandate to effectively kidnap legal residents and ship them off to foreign prisons. But he never did. And now in poll after poll after poll, the American people are basically telling the president that they are not okay with any of this. I mean, in that New York Times poll that I mentioned, by a wide margin, voters think Trump has simply gone too far. 66% of voters across the country, 2/3 of the electorate, describe Trump's first term in office, this 100 days, as chaotic. And 59% described it as scary. So too far, chaotic, scary, not the words you want in your first 100 days, by the way, but it all sounds kind of right. It's not hard to see why the public feels that way either, especially since the country is now facing so many crises of Trump's own making. I mean, just consider his delusional trade policy. Trump promised that punishing tariffs would force countries like China to negotiate better deals. And yet China's basically called his bluff. In an interview with Time magazine this week, Trump claimed that his administration was in talks with China, even saying that President Xi had called him personally. But in a pretty embarrassing twist, to be honest, China said that actually no, negotiators those haven't taken place, and no talks are underway. They effectively suggested that Trump was...
Things couldn't be going worse for Donald Trump right now, and he knows it. That's why he's lashing out, unraveling more than ever, and resorting to intimidation tactics. He believes that coercion is the only way he can maintain the absolute power he craves. But it's up to us, the public, to push back, speak out, and show that we have the power and agency in this critical moment. That's exactly what we aim to do on this show. If you want to support that mission, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and if you've made it to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, take care.